All right. Happy politics, and welcome to yet another edition of BC Poly Hot Stove, a totally planned, unplanned pandemic election version of BC Poly Hot Stove. My name is Maclean K. I'm the editor-in-chief of this very fine publication, The Orca. And if you're watching this on YouTube, yes, this clutter is my usual living room. I'm joined in a socially distant manner by someone who has fewer pencils than Drex.
Yes, that's not hard. It's Jordan Bateman, and I am the VP Communications for the Independent Contractors and Businesses Association. Just let me say, unlike Drex, I love the mainstream media. The mainstream media are great. They're the greatest. They're the best. The Unspun was eye-opening, I understand.
Oh, it was great. It was a good show. I didn't know. I literally did not know that that Drex has a thing for pencils. I'm being literal, by the way. He's a pencil aficionado. I did not know that. I have not yet met I do not know any other pencil aficionados. So it was interesting. Hey,
let's just hold up. We now know more about Drex's personal life than we know about any of the three candidates after this week for
That's
Premier
true.
of British Columbia.
That's a good bridge, actually, because I was going to say, we last spoke on Monday, or Tuesday, I should say, after the first big policy splash idea of this campaign, which we talked about extensively. And then since then, what's the big thing that happened this week?
Well, the big thing is almost nothing happened. Other than PST, no significant announcements, although the NDP would claim that their long-term care home plan is one. It's not. I mean, that surprises no one and is part of the overall package Dix announced when he was, a month ago or so. So that really was a surprise. Not sure what the Greens were doing all week. My sense is they were probably running around signing up candidates.
Well, I think that's exactly what they were doing all week, yeah.
So that takes time and effort. I think they're still only about halfway there, and we're into the final day. It's hard to get 100 people to sign forms or call in this day and age. So that's kind of going on. It was just sort of if you were skeptical about the ability of the parties to break through and actually connect with voters during COVID, you were right. It has not been good this week. No one's really cut through anything. I don't think any voter feels more equipped today than they did a week ago. The PST promise was big and bold, and I think the Liberals tried their best. But, right down to the NDP, scheduling press conferences at the same time as the Liberals.
Which is happening again today, both of them at 10 a.m.
Yeah. So, the Liberals put out their media advisory first, and, the NDP could go before, could go after. They decide to always plunge in right at the same time, which is, interesting strategy. But look, when you're ahead like the NDP are, as the polls say, you play it safe. Joe Biden puts a lid on his campaign at 9:30 a.m. most days, right? You're literally in a bubble. Don't do anything. And that frustrates a lot of us because, here we are. Let's see, we are 3 weeks from the end of voting on the 24th. People already have their ballots and can be casting votes now. Advanced voting starts in less than 2 weeks, and we have no debates that have happened. We have no debates scheduled. Now, we're nebulously told by some folks in the media who are part of the consortium that, they're coming. When? When are they coming? Where? And is there more than one? There's no, I don't even think the Vancouver Sun had a story about the election on their front page today. There's no juice. There's no, this is all the reasons why we shouldn't have done this election during COVID, unless you're John Horgan and you're ahead and you want to steal a majority government.
There's a lot of neutral zone trapping going on. A couple things you mentioned
that
there.
That is exactly it. This is the the 90s New Jersey Devils of campaigns, and by God, Marty Brodeur still does commercials. It's terrible.
He's made a good living out of it.
The guy would face 21 shots in a game, and he'd think he's the greatest goalie of all time. Face 55 shots like Thatcher Demko. Then tell me.
21 shots a game, and 5 of them were botched icing attempts.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway, that's all the Marty Brodeur jokes you're going to get this week on Hot Stove. I think. I can't promise that.
That guy's always losing his cups. I don't know.
It's true. A couple of things you mentioned that I want to grab onto. You mentioned the Greens and the trouble they're having getting. Sonia First said that they're not going to have a full provincial slate. I think most of us thought that that was probably going to be true, but that they would get close. If not 87, then like 80. And then, that's still pretty good. As you say, I haven't looked this morning, but I think they're somewhere closer to half, and they have a day left.
Yeah.
This is a shame for a number of reasons. First of all, it's not good for the Green Party, but also in an election, you referenced people with blank ballots. Some of them are already mailing in, and you are allowed to just write the name of the party you support. If you live in whatever riding you live in, you're in Langley East. Let's say you and your neighbor, probably not you, want to vote Green. You can just write Green and mail in your ballot today, and your vote is cast. If Langley East is one of those ridings that does not have a Green candidate, you or your neighbor have just spoiled your ballot. That's not good. You don't have to be a Green supporter to recognize that that's not healthy. That doesn't helping anybody.
No. Well, think of it. It's even worse when you think of and this is the nefariousness of this situation and how it helps the NDP. Conservative. Lots of people, we've just gone through a federal election, the Aaron O'Toole leadership race. Lots of people will write conservative. Conservatives are going to have less than a dozen candidates, which means, look, we're going to set records in this election for the most spoiled ballots or uncounted ballots because people are going to be voting for folks who aren't on the ballot. Yeah. You and I were joking off air that, if you really wanted to get evil, you would run a bunch of guys named Jim Green, Ralph Green, Dave Green, Bill Green.
Didn't the Conservatives run a Christine Clark in 2013?
Yeah. or you'd run like Joe Torre, Ralph O'Toole, Sean Harper, Bobby Conservative. Yeah. There's no such thing as if you have conservative in your last name, kudos to you. But that's what you would do if you had time to actually be evil and nefarious. Although I'm sure now war rooms are scattering around thinking, hey, that's not a bad idea. What can we do?
Joe Conservative. That's a good name. That would be a small list.
It's me, Joey Conservative. I'm asking for your vote on October 24th. I don't know why he's Italian, but there you go.
I mean, we wrote it. This was news earlier in the week, and I wrote about it. I mean, no less than John Horgan, who is kept up to speed on how things are running.
Sort of invested in it.
What's that?
And just a little bit invested in it.
Yes, just a little bit invested in it. You're right. Thank you. He said that you could write the name of the party leader and it would count. No.
Nope.
That is not true. Nope. That is not true.
Wait, Maclean, are you saying John Horgan got a detail wrong?
Well, that did happen. He withdrew, but hey, man, it's now. Of course, if you live in
Wanda Fuca.
Thank you. I always either it was Quamot or Langford Wanda Fuca or Andrew Wilkinson's riding or Sonia Firstenow's riding. Then yes, you can write the name of the party leader because they're your local candidate. But I mean, for the premier to say that on live television was, I mean, I'm not saying this to slam the premier. I'm just saying if he can make that mistake, then your average voter who may or may not be paying very close attention, because there's a lot of stuff going on right now. It is entirely possible that in a moment of confusion, they could just write, oh, yeah, I think I'm voting. Oh, I saw that he said you can just write John Horgan. I don't even know the name of my candidate, and it's not on this piece of paper that I've been given either. So,
well, here's what I was thinking about. So I haven't seen any new 2020 NDP signs yet. I think they're being printed, and I'm sure they'll be rolling out soon. I have seen Liberal ones, and they do not say Andrew Wilkinson and the BC Liberal team. Now, do the Horgan ones, given Horgan's personal popularity, say John Horgan and the NDP team? If they do, that could seriously screw up a few, maybe it's a few dozen votes, maybe it's a few hundred, who knows. That could be a big problem.
I have not seen a single election sign, and I mean not one.
You never leave your house, though.
Well, I walk my kid to kindergarten, and I go grocery shopping.
Ian's not putting up election signs in your house so you see them?
No, not yet. And but I mean, I live in at the risk of giving too much personal information away. I live in Fernwood, which is about as left as even by Victoria standards it's left. And so, I mean, this is going to be one of those polls that's and I mean, literally 75% NDP. And I'm not suggesting this is indicative of anything, but not a single sign. You would never know there's an election going on.
Who is it? Is that Carol James's old riding, or is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, so the new candidate doesn't have them printed yet.
Yeah, that's right, because she just had it nominated. Grace Lohr, I believe.
Yeah. So that's happened. I've noticed some of the incumbent MLAs have got signs up, but they're all from their 2017 batches. They're not 2020 signs. Jazz Showhall, for example, in Richmond, Queensborough has a bunch that say elect, He's missing the two most important letters in any campaign advertising, R-E, re. Take it from a guy who won election and then won a big re-election. RE is a powerful term. So yeah, it's. I'll be just curious to see if they do have the John Horgan in the NDP team, that could be an interesting little wrinkle as well. Or maybe it doesn't mean anything. It's an election about nothing at a time where we're all caring about something far more important, which is the literal survival of the species. Maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah. The other thing you mentioned that I wanted to grab onto is the debates. The point you made about the consortium is totally valid. They too did not know this election was coming, right?
Yeah.
So
when are these debates? When are they coming? Usually you have a radio and a TV. Wilkinson challenged this guy to 3. Horgan said anytime, anywhere. And here we are, 2 weeks into the campaign. We don't have a date. I was going back and forth with Marcella Bernardo from News 1130, and she's like, "Oh, you don't think there'll be a debate?" I'm like, "Well, you know better than me, Marcella. Like, you guys hosted the last one, so you tell me, like, where it's happening. Like, I hope so. But again, if you're John Horgan, if front runner-itis, put a lid on it. Why would you open yourself up to that? The only thing that could happen is you lose votes."
If John Horgan's, the polls being what they are, John Horgan's best strategy is to try and restrict himself to one debate and as late in the campaign as possible, after a significant percentage of people will already have voted.
Totally.
That's the best strategy. That is, when we were talking about playing defense and the neutral zone trap, that's the platonic ideal right there.
Well, I'll give you I'll give you 60 minutes on Thursday the 22nd.
You and me, Andrew Wilkinson, let's settle this out.
Yeah.
Because, you're right. It's not that John Horgan is bad at debates. It's that he's going to be playing defense and he's going to be getting attacked on two sides. I know the Greens are relishing the chance to have Sonia deliver her, withering stares to John Horgan and just say, you lied. Because, they did. And but the longer that can be put off and the more people that have already voted and it's too late, the better. Yep. The other thing that was interesting is I guess Fairchild is trying to organize a not a Chinese language debate, but a debate
and Radio
largely
Punjab
for the Chinese Canadian community. What's that?
And Radio Punjab, they would simulcast it with different interpreters. Yeah.
And this is something we don't talk about enough in BC. We talk about mainstream media, but there is a significant and growing percentage of British Columbians, especially in the Lower Mainland, that don't really consume this media. They consume things like Omni and Fairchild and the Red FM, and so not catering to them is more than a mistake. It's frankly a disservice because that's where people are getting their news, and they deserve to have their issues brought up.
Yeah, well, and I noticed our old friend, he won't like being called old, but Shinder Purwal, Dr. Shinder, he just signed on. He has a new radio show on Sherry Punjab, which I think is 600 on your AM dial in the morning. So he's, Harjinder Thin is a well-known broadcaster, not just in Punjabi circles, but across the political spectrum. I've done a Fairchild debate during the TransLink referendum. They invited myself and I believe Greg Moore. I want to say it was Greg Moore from the pro-TransLink tax side. And they paired us off with a interpreter / radio commenter for each of us. And we went and we did it in the food court of Aberdeen Mall. And it was being filmed, it was being broadcast live. And now I thoroughly enjoyed the experience, Maclean, because we weren't sophisticated enough to be able to stack the room. We didn't have to. The questions that were coming out, it was like I'd written them myself. People they did not want this stupid tax and they were going hard. And that was the last debate the TransLink folks would do with me. It was so funny, leaving Maclean, I got stopped by this very nice family, and they're like, "Can we take a picture with you?" And you're like, "Oh, okay, I'm nobody, but okay, I just don't like taxes." Okay, so, but it was a big deal, and Fairchild has TV and radio platforms. They also act as a news service to other platforms. If you can have, I think it's Red FM, not Radio Punjab, that wanted to do it as well. They can translate it to their listenership as well. Of course, this is something that should be done. Of course, it should be done. Unless you're a front runner and you don't want to do anything to rock the boat, and unless you're a front runner who made specific promises to that community during the last election, i.e., we're going to keep Uber out, and you totally reneged you lied to them and flip-flopped. Then you definitely don't want to do that debate, right? So,
Yeah.
it's unfortunate. I mean, you're right. There should be a radio debate, there should be a TV debate, and there should be an ethnic media debate.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, and it won't happen in this campaign, but in usual campaigns, the leaders will do, an editorial board thing with the Times Colonist here in Victoria or in Kamloops or, places like that. With, even with the Globe and Mail, there's less than 10,000 readers in the province. That's true, by the way. Mm-hmm. And yet, these massive audiences...
I blame Gary Mason for that, by the way.
And yet these massive audiences in Surrey, which is arguably the most crucial community in the province electorally, it's just like, well, they'll watch it on Global. No, that is very outdated thinking. And I'm being generous.
And they have specific concerns and questions about their community and that they want to talk about. And they should be allowed to. They should be able to. And leaders should respond to them. Instead, we get, the segmentation of the electorate, which isn't great. You're right. There should be a debate in the north. There should be, on CKPG or whatever, with specific questions. But, again, Horgan's trying to run the safest of safe campaigns. Now, look, Main Street was out today with polling, and look, you're not going to hear me cheering on Main Street as a great pollster. like they are, weren't they the ones that had Nenshi going down to defeat? Whatever.
Yeah, they are.
But if you take their numbers, they have, I think, a 10 or 11 point lead now for the NDP. That's still commanding, but that's been cut in half from what it was pre-election. Mm-hmm. As most people expected, the race is starting to tighten up. As Conservatives, drop out and have less than 12 candidates, that vote will then contract even further. You're whittling it away, day by day. Your support starts to drop, that does end up mattering at some point, right?
Yeah. Well, although in this campaign, less than others possibly, because so many more people will vote in advance. Mm-hmm. You can see the calculations now that, after the fact, it's like, oh, of course. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And they're not good things, but man, there's a lot of advantages built in here for the home team.
You got to give the Horgan quote here about Trump, because it was just the fucking stupidest thing. I'm sorry to swear, but that was the fucking stupidest thing I've heard in this campaign.
Sorry. And when you said Trump, my first thought was he had said something about Horgan and COVID. But I don't think that's happened. Yeah, he was being asked about the debates, was John Horgan, and said his response, I don't have it verbatim, was essentially that, British Columbians watched Joe Biden and Donald Trump debate last night, shouting at each other, which is true. And so I don't think that's healthy and good for democracy, and we don't want to see that here. That is the worst possible argument for not having a debate. Yeah. What I said, I was trying to be funny. I said on Twitter, if you sit through Battlefield Earth, that is not a reason to never watch a movie again. Yeah. That's, there's a
I've sat through Battlefield Earth, by the way.
Yeah. if a house collapses, it's not a reason to never build homes again. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And the idea that, and here's the thing, the implication there is that there's going to be yelling in the debate, and it's unavoidable, and there's nothing he can do about it. First of all, John Horgan, if you're afraid of yelling happening in the debate, just don't yell. Yeah. I would say the same to Andrew Wilkinson and Sonia Firstenow, but they didn't say that about the debate. Other thing I would argue is that
Sonia yelling would be unfathomable.
What I was going to say.
It's unfathomable.
There are a laundry list of criticisms you could level at Sonia Firstenow and Andrew Wilkinson, but propensity for yelling is just not among them, especially Sonia Firstenow. I don't even know what that would sound like.
Yeah, but you see, Horgan's laying down tracks here, right? What he's laying down is so that when Wilkinson interrupts him, he can say his surrogates can say after, it was a very Trump-like performance from Andrew Wilkinson. And if you go back to the prop rep debate, which was probably the most miserable 30 minutes of John Horgan's reign as premier, for him personally, where Wilkinson just shredded him on details, took him apart, and won that debate in points and won it on points, but also won it as far as Horgan was completely discombobulated by the end. Come on, man. That's not, the kids say it's woke and lit. Oh, man. Come on, man. Oh, I'm the premier, man. That kind of nonsense. Wilkinson shredded him. And if that happens again in this debate, the comment will be, oh, wow, very Trump-like performance from Andrew Wilkinson. No, he's just going to shred you. We all know, Horgan, John Horgan's not great on details. And you're the premier of the province. You have to you can't make every decision. You have to divest things to your team. And the easy especially the easier things, like if it's, I think it's Stephen Carter who always says there's no easy decisions come to the Premier's office, right? Like they're all 51-49 decisions, because if it was 70-30, it would already be done by the Minister of Energy or whatever. So
very true, by the way.
Yeah, so but you do get held to account for all of these decisions, and you do have to have a certain familiarity with the details. Now, Andrew Wilkinson, for what he lacks in retail skills, makes up for in depth of detail, too much detail, incredible intellect, smart guy. The funny thing is, the better comparison on the debate between these two would probably be Trump and Hillary Clinton, where you have one person who is incredibly, wants to get into the details as much as possible, and the other person does not want to get into the details at all. So Horgan's laying down track. So the first time that, Wilkinson interrupts him in the debate, all his surrogates can say, oh, he's interrupting like Trump, like Trump, like Trump. And of course, the media will be like, oh, my, trying to spin the media who have just watched this debacle. And, I don't think there was a single Canadian media personality who tweeted anything positive about that debacle. It's funny, the games, right? But come on, it's the stupidest thing ever to, what about all the great debates that, were important? What about Gordon Wilson? This is why nothing gets done in British Columbia. What about Ronald Reagan, right? I paid for that microphone. Mike, what about, or whatever the guy's name was, what about Kennedy versus Nixon? It can be like that, John Horgan. Bring your A game. Bring your A game, John Horgan. Bring your A game, and it'll be like that. Bring this, lack of detail, woke lit, man, and it will be a debacle like the Americans.
Well, and the thing that makes it different, the dynamic up here, is obviously that it's three people, right? I mean, let's be honest. The moment Andrew Wilkinson opens his mouth, that the usual suspects on Twitter are going to say he looks like Trump, because that's just what they're going to do.
Which is so, it doesn't matter what he says. He's the most un-Trump person of all, right?
No, but that's what they're going to say, right? Because it's a word they can throw around. Mm-hmm. But the problem Horgan has is, if he was just debating Andrew Wilkinson, he probably could do that. He probably could just sit there with, and say, well, we're working together on COVID, and try and get Wilkinson angry, and then that's exactly what they would do. The problem is Sonia Furstenau. Yeah. And the reason that we're all there, and the CASA agreement, and the fact that they met the Friday before the election, that he hadn't decided to call until the next morning, even though he'd already filmed ads in the smoke, and it's all this stuff we've talked about before, et cetera, and so forth. And so that's why these debates are going to be hard for him. You're right. The points you made about Andrew Wilkinson and the PR debate are right. That's totally valid. That wasn't a good experience for Horgan. Yeah. And I think that Wilkinson is probably is at least Horgan's equal as a debater. But Sonia Furstenau brings a whole other thing in. We don't really know what she's like as a debater yet, but we do know that she has been wronged. Yeah. And everyone knows she's been wronged. And it's going to be really hard to avoid that. And talking about that is going to be extremely difficult for the NDP, because all the reasons they've given, and there have been a lot of them, the facts just don't seem to line up. Yeah. Well, and she's just so good at the sad eyes, right? The big sad eyes. Like, you, sir, you lied. How can we trust you on your word on childcare? You lied. You say we didn't support your $10 a day childcare plan. That's because we wanted free childcare. So stop lying to British Columbians. She could throw out the word lie 75 times, and people would just be eating it with a spoon. One more thing about Horgan and the debates. Debates are such a minor part of political life now, as far as actual practice. So Horgan's been in 3 debates in his political life. Radio against Christy Clark and Andrew Weaver, TV against Christy Clark and Andrew Weaver, and prop rep. The first radio one, he lost. She touched his arm, and he recoiled in horror, and don't touch me, and it was Hulk Hogan as worse. The second one, it was basically a tie with Clark. He lost the prop rep one. If you're 0-2-1 and you're going into week 4 of your NFL season, you're not feeling terribly confident. And if you can punt the game and get a forfeit instead, that's what you want. So, you have all of those different things. Sonia Furstenau, though, she, like we've said before, she does the grievance well without seeming like a sad sack. And that is a tough thing to do politically. Yeah, it really is. And, this week she's been busy on just recruiting candidates. I think next week,
they come out with maybe more. By the end of next week, we should have platforms for these three parties. If they matter anymore, I don't know. Like, why even cost a platform where the whole Western world's in massive debt? Like,
yeah.
But, you got to put something out. So she'll find her feet, and I think by Thanksgiving, especially if you can get a debate in right after Thanksgiving, she could be quite the potent force. Right now, they're hanging around at that 15 point mark in the polls. I think they had 17 in the last election. Could she get it to 17, 18, 19? I think she could.
Yeah. Hey, you mentioned I agree. You mentioned the platforms and why even bother costing it?
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. I think that question is still going to get asked, but it doesn't really apply anymore. We kind of saw a preview of it with the PST announcement, where it was like, well, how can we afford this? And the answer is, well,
borrowing.
We can't afford anything.
Yeah.
We're $13 billion in the hole. Like, this is
no. So 13 billion or 15 billion, does it really matter?
Yeah.
If it gets businesses up off the mat quicker, then hopefully won't be in the hole as much later on.
Well, exactly. And so, I mean, the platforms are going to come out and people are still going to say, well, has this been rigorously costed? And it's like, well, we know what it'll cost, but can we afford it? No. We can't afford anything right now.
Yeah.
We can't afford groceries.
The hilarious thing to me is the NDP tries scare tactic, the PST cut. Oh, they're going to cut healthcare and education and babies and sunshine to do it, blah, blah, blah. No, like, come on, man. Like, you guys have a $13 billion spending plan deficit as well. Are you cutting any of that stuff? No. It's like when you're fighting a forest fire, you spend what you got to spend to put it out. We're spending what we got to spend in order to get the economy back up off the mat. And I can tell you that within the employer community, certainly within construction, this PST cut has been taken with great seriousness, excitement, and actual like, hey, that could really help. Because it's a year of no paperwork. It's a year of no layered in costs. And this nonsense, the NDP keep trying to say, oh, it's only on essentials. I think it's only on yachts. No, all of us pay PST on lots of things. Diapers are essential for families, certain families, right? Like these
only on yachts.
Like these are essential items, right? And I think it does make the NDP seem a bit out of touch with what's going on the ground. From a construction point of view, I think we talked about this last time. Like housing starts would kick up because you have a chance to pull out some costs. So I did back when I was with the CTF. This was like 5-6 years ago now, we did a study of a $400,000 condo and looked at all the taxes embedded within it. And about 10,000 of that was PST embedding. Now, that was not a $400,000 home, which actually was $270 before taxes, but turned out to be $400 with all the taxes included. Now these houses cost 2-3 times that. You're talking about like $27,000 worth of savings on a home construction. That is going, if it's a marginal project, that will get it over the line and started in 2021.
The other thing about the PST thing that was interesting is I watched a Twitter conversation between two people I know who I don't really want to name because I like them both. But I'm not going to do it. But one is a BC Liberal supporter, one is an NDP supporter, and you know both these people. But they're friends, these two, and they were debating the PST issue. And the BC Liberal guy was saying, well, I don't understand, because you guys have been saying for years that this is a regressive tax. And so eliminating it will, like, by definition, help the working class and the poor because they spend a much higher percentage of their income on living expenses. And the NDP guy came back saying, well, here, it's too big a discussion for Twitter, but here's this long paper, and here's the part that I want you to read from Progressive Economics, I think was the website. And it was literally that it's fine when one side does it, but not the other. Because I'm serious, because if these guys cut the tax, they're going to use it as an excuse to cut services. Right. But if the good guys cut the tax, that's because they care about the people with lower incomes. That was literally the justification. Heads we win, tails you lose. I shouldn't have to explain why that's a bad argument. We can't get into this thing where it's a bad argument. It's a bad idea because they had it. It might be a bad idea, but that's not the reason why. It can't ever be the reason why.
Yeah. And it's a temporary 1-year thing.
Yeah, that's the other point.
Why would you cut services over we didn't cut other services? Come on. So the NDP, I think, are on shaky ground there. I think this is why another reason why they don't want to get into a debate, because they don't want to bring any attention at all to that promise. You're right. Look, CCPA, Canadian Center for Policy Alternatives, for years they've been calling the sales taxes a regressive tax, which I always found weird. And to their credit, before this, good for identifying it at a time where you were also saying it should, sales taxes should come into Alberta. you had a Notley government that was seriously considering it, and you had CCPA at the time saying, sales taxes are regressive. But you're right. Now that the shoe's on the other foot, you got to stand by it. It's just a rare tax. This is a rare tax cut or tax policy that would actually help every British Columbian, no matter where you are on the income spectrum, and help businesses, which need to employ every British Columbian, no matter where you are on the income spectrum.
The analogy I like, and I'm sorry if we used it last week, is that it's not COVID's hit you and you can't afford your mortgage. It's not, it's free now. It's if you can take a month off. Your bank or your mortgage lender, and that's what this is. We're giving you a little holiday for breathing room to get back on your feet. That is how I interpreted this idea. It's not a windfall. It's you need a break because we all do right now.
Yeah, and the great BC Liberal turncoat George Abbott, put out a book saying, that 25% income tax cut destroyed services, blah, blah. Well, no, we funded, more services than ever in British Columbia 5 years after, thanks to the economic growth that happened. Because you spurred it on and said, we're changing from the dismal decade. Sorry, I'm using all my 90s. Went from the dismal decade to the golden era. Golden era, was that right? Anyways. The new era. The new era.
The new era. Yeah.
And so, these things work. And the Liberals could have come out with an income tax cut. That would not have been terribly progressive. It would have benefited wealthy people more than, the yacht owners that John Horgan likes to talk about, more than the little everyday people. But they didn't. The PST was a targeted idea brought up by the Business Council of British Columbia, saying cut in half and give our guys a fighting chance. They probably only said cut it in half because they thought that was bold for the Business Council. They probably never dreamed that anyone would actually talk about eliminating it completely for a year. But it's good policy. It would do a lot for the economy. It would do a lot for businesses and for employers at a time where, it's October 2nd. The tax deferral cliff is here. Folks, the tax deferral cliff is real and it's terrifying. There are businesses now who are scrambling to figure out how they're going to pay their employer health tax, their PST, their corporate income tax, all those different, their WorkSafe BC fees, all these different things that government layers on, they're all due now. And some businesses can afford it and others can't, and they will slip into oblivion this month.
Yeah, I saw that my favorite Vancouver restaurant is closed permanently, which is one less reason to go. And unfortunately, they're going to have a lot of company. This is a real thing. This is not fear-mongering. It's I mentioned restaurants. 60% of them across the country are expected to close forever by the end of the month after next. That's terrifying.
Yeah, a couple nights ago, I took my wife to the Yaletown Brewing Company for dinner, and it was empty. There was 6 tables at dinner time on a beautiful fall night. We sat outside the patio, it was gorgeous. Yaletown was virtually deserted, hardly anyone walking around. And, you just think and, I'm counting the staff, right? And I'm like, okay, so there's, 4 guys in the back cooking, there's the host, the waitresses, the servers, blah, blah. You're doing the math, the bar. There's almost as many people working right now here as there are eating. How do they make that work?
I know someone who works in a movie theater here in Victoria, and she says that the staff outnumber patrons about 4 to 1.
I believe it. I took my kid to Colossus to see SpongeBob SquarePants a few weeks ago, and it was exactly like that. There was 5 people in the theater, and I counted 7 staff.
And again.
All right, Maclean.
I'm back.
Oh, there he is. Maclean is breaking up, but he has returned. Do you want to close this off?
I was that distraught. Well, we'll talk again next week. This has been another sobering edition of the wrap up anyway of BC Poly Hot Stove. My favorite restaurant. Come on. That's just unfair at this point. Anyway, you can follow us on all of your favorite podcasting platforms, and I'm not going to list them all this time, but you can also find us on YouTube and, of course, the mothership at the lovely orchid.ca. Until then, I am Maclean K. That is Jordan Bateman. And until next week, happy politics.